I appreciate my mom. I appreciate my wife, who is a mother. Some of my favorite moms are also American Idol moms. Do you know about American Idol moms? Have you ever watched like the little interviews that happen after people go off stage? Who's like usually right there when it's like the worst singer ever? Have you watched this? You noticed this? It's usually a mom who usually ends up saying something like, man, the world is never going to understand you. They just can't recognize true talent. And they will just say things over and over again, and their kid is like the worst singer ever in like American Idol history. And I believe that everyone should have an American Idol mom because we need them in life. And at the same time, it points to something that's just very fascinating. That as they come alongside those, they see something in their kids that maybe not everyone else recognizes. Are you familiar with the self-esteem movement? Have you heard of this? No? Okay. So you've been a part of it for generations now. Like if your kid is on a team and everyone got medals, this would be part of the self-esteem movement, in that everyone who participates is worthy of getting an award and a medal. This has been happening for a while. Technically, many would point to the 1980s as maybe the strongest time of the self-esteem movement. And I would argue that mothers and even parents in general, this starts to expand outside of motherhood, are always trying to navigate this. And then kids are trying to navigate it also, because now parents are dictated on their ability to encourage and provide self-esteem for their kids and or the lack of. And kids may have low self-esteem on this. So it's been a movement for a while, but the reality is that the self-esteem movement is not new to us. Even if we go back to the late 1800s, one of the kind of fathers of psychologists, William Jones, he would actually say that this is, the design is for people to find self-esteem. That for each individual, self-esteem, the way it arrives, is that you find success in something that goes above and beyond your expectations of yourself or of something. So self-esteem itself is derived from you achieving the things that you were set out to do. Now, if we go back to the American Idol mom and or parents and or those around them, who's setting those expectations for what someone is to achieve? Where do those expectations come from? There's another proof of the self-esteem movement and how relevant it is in our culture. You can finish this sentence for me. Sweetheart, when you grow up, you can be like, we just say that as if it's true, right? Like we just say these things and like, man, may you just dream big. And may nobody ever tell you you can't. And may no one ever like question your ability in something, because they are absolutely wrong. You can do whatever you want. You want to be an astronaut, you want to be a doctor, you want to be a princess, you want to be a prince. Whatever you want to do, you can do it. How untrue is that? Like if we actually, like we just believe that oftentimes, and then when we actually pause to think about that, many of us in the room right now are like, that is just a crock of stuff. Like this, my life has never been able to live up to the expectations in which I had. I have never been able to fully do the things in which I was told I was going to be able to do and or desired. This also starts to lead to more modalities of self and how we try to kind of find ourselves and to define ourselves in the world. Self-attribution would be another one. When we think about, or like the hierarchy of needs by Maslow, he has a whole understanding of how we arrive at self-esteem. It starts with psychological needs, so like you need breath in your lungs, you need some level of shelter and or food, and it moves all the way up to self-esteem. That we can basically find ourselves within ourselves. That we can over time produce the life in which we're intended to live. And that everyone is capable of doing this. And that if it's not happening, what starts to happen is that we look outwards and say, well, that's not helping me achieve who I'm supposed to become. Well, I was supposed to do this, this, and this, but X, Y, and Z happened and it stole that from me. Well, if everybody else could just see how talented I am, then I would. It just goes on and on and on. You and I are products of a culture that is highly regarding self-esteem constantly. Alain de Botton, I believe his name is. He's an English trained philosopher that's also an author. And he does a lot of work around America specifically in self-esteem. Like, we are very unique in this compared to the rest of the world. And he writes a number of books, but one of them is the anxiety essentially around our self-esteem. And America is built on the ability for people to achieve self and to find self and to attain self. And what he starts to point to is because we have an individualism that we're built on, meaning I can express myself, I can achieve my dreams, I can go after whatever I want. He talks about other generations and other cultures in the world who never had that. For so many centuries, you were a shoemaker because the 9 generations before you were a shoemaker. You lived in this part of a town because another town would not recognize your family history, and so there you stayed there forever. Now, there's what we would look at and say there's a lot of downsides to that. People who actually didn't have the ability to have self-expression. And we want people to have self-expression. There's actually dignity and value there. At the same time, what most psychologists and sociologists are saying is that the need to now express ourselves individually is beginning to not free us but crush us. That there is a weight put upon our lives to self-define who we are that we actually cannot hold up to. That we look to everything else and everyone else to define ourselves and say, here's who I am. Here's who I'm to be in this world. There's a quote here that came from an article I was reading on some of this work that I felt grabbed the essence of it here. Basically, what they're saying is this movement of self-affirmation, what it leads to is maintaining a phenomenal experience of the self, is adaptively and morally adequate, that is competent, good, coherent, unitary, stable, capable of free choice, capable of controlling important outcomes. Maintain a phenomenal experience of the self. You and I work day in and day out to maintain a phenomenal experience of self. That is crushing. I don't know about you, but I can't do that. I am not capable of controlling important outcomes. Oftentimes, the more I try to control them, they could actually just get worse. Like, what usually seems to work is when I say, man, either here nor there, I'm still here. If this happens or that happens, we'll see. I don't know if it's good or if it's bad. Time will tell. Like, it seems to be that this thing right here, if we go back to the self-esteem mathematics, that the success of something that needs to override the expectation of ourselves, that is how we find our self-esteem. You and I are being pressed over and over again to a lower self-esteem because we will never achieve the expectations of which are being put on you and I. Because if you look at your social media, what's happening? Over and over again, you're being given expectations of who you're to be and what you're to do and who you're not to be. And you're being reminded of what you don't have. And you're being told what you need. Think of how much less stuff you would have in your house if you never knew what anyone else had in their house. Like, over and over and over again, you are being told to be something and to express yourself in a way that feels true, and that you need to manage everything so well. And then when things start to crumble, what starts to happen? This article does a lot of work around self-defensiveness. Because now the image that we work so hard to prop up, when it starts to kind of get poked, when who I'm trying to make myself be to everybody else starts to kind of show cracks, what do? Well, we find ways to try and defend that or prop ourselves up. or retreat and run. And it's this constant battle over and over again, and what sits at the center of it is our self-esteem, our self-worth, who we are, our dignity. Ultimately, what's happening over and over again out of all of this is you and I are asking, where do I belong? Like, where do I actually belong in this world? And underneath belonging is, where do I feel most right? Where do I feel most loved? Where do I feel most seen? What's my identity? What's like most true about me? And so then what we do is we try to figure out ways to belong. We use our politics to try and insert where we belong in this world. We use social circles and status. We use our titles and our roles within jobs or within parenting. And everything now starts to get exercised. My self-worth, my self-esteem is now attached to what I do. It's attached to the way I vote. It's attached to the way I'm going to express myself sexually. It's attached to whatever you and I want to make up in this world of define yourself within yourself. Because what you need to do is you need to maintain that quote. You need to do it all. And then what starts to happen, as many of these will point to, is now we start to find the differences sociologically. We actually start to see the massive differences from the rich to the poor. And why on individual expression, those who have much, it's because they've achieved much, and those who have little, it's because they've chosen little. They've done wrong in their life. They've chosen wrong. They've chosen to be poor. They've chosen to be lazy. They're chosen. This is what they've chosen in their life. And therefore, if you're rich, man, you've chosen to work hard. You've chosen to overcome. You've pulled yourself up by your bootstraps. Very quickly, I think we can all know that that's not the fullness of how we arrive here today. There's privilege. There's race and ethnicity. There's social systems. There's so much more that plays into who we are and where we arrive today. But individuality now starts to make an us and a them. And what you and I are trying to figure out is, where do I belong? Well, I don't want to be in that rung of the social order, so therefore I will And now we have to climb. And more, the American dream starts to be held over our head. And you and I lead busy lives, and yet we're exhausted. We try to keep up with the social influencers, and it seems that they have it just perfectly figured out in their 18-second video on whatever they're talking as they lock the kids in the room so that no one heard the screaming in the back. I don't know, you could just keep doing this over and over again. So what do we do? How do we find who we are in this world? How do we find our place of belonging? It's interesting that what we start to attach to is what we're able to do in this world, and then that now starts to make a difference between me and someone else, and I can find it who I am. In our series, A Meaningful Life, that we have a few more weeks of, just asking really specific questions around what does it mean to have a meaningful life? Because many philosophers and psychologists from the self-esteem movement and whatever else would propose that if we can continue to self-define and kind of have the world curate around us, we will live a meaningful life. We will find ourselves once we achieve the thing in which we were expected to achieve. That's when we'll arrive. But I know you've achieved things in your life that you set out to achieve, and yet you still wondered, is there still more? That did not scratch the itch that I thought I had. I'm not as fulfilled as I thought I would be. I still feel like I'm lacking. I still want more. What's the next thing? Or the opposite starts to happen and we just retract and we pull away. I will never be able to. This is the opposite of high self-esteem. It's low self-esteem. And now we can never actually succeed the things because we have no expectations of succeeding at all. Paul, who wrote a good amount of the New Testament, is writing to a church in Rome. And we're picking up in the 12th chapter of this letter. And he's done a lot of work around Jesus and his work in this world and his death and his resurrection. What that means for you and I to live in a new life and the grace that's been handed to us if we would take it up. And then in 12, he starts to make a turn and he starts to answer, what does it look like to be human? What does it look like for you and I to experience fullness in life? And in this moment, what's happening is he starts to talk to them about this group of people that are coming together from different racial and ethnic groups, from different socioeconomic groups. Like the ways in which they understood each other were very different. You have people who were traditionally in life with God, and then those that were out, and now they're being invited in. And the people who had been with God for a long time are like, who are these people? How are they just in here? And why don't they have to do all these law things that we've been doing forever? It's chaos. And then he starts to talk to them about gifts and the unique capabilities and attributes in which people have been given. And what starts to happen in this moment is that this early church starts to have people that start to look down on others because of their own gifts. There are people who have certain capabilities that say, my capabilities in the church are better, and therefore you must be down here. And what it starts to parallel is culture. It starts to look exactly like the way in which culture was designed, which was to separate people, to create higher and lower, to create those that have and those that have not. And Paul is writing to them in this moment as they're trying to figure themselves out, as they are pressing down others and lifting themselves up. And as we read these last couple weeks, starting in Romans 12, 1-2. Do we have that one up there? We'll just get caught up real quick. Therefore, he says, based on all of that God has done, I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. That God wants more than just your heart. He actually wants your entire life, every aspect of it. And he says, do not conform to the pattern of this world, meaning do not hold so tightly to what is fleeting. Do not hold so close to the things in which you can just feel and see right now as what's most real. Do not think that all of your life is wrapped up in 30, 60, or 90 years on this earth. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of mind. Then you'll be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. Today's section I want to look at. Next piece. For by the grace given me, I say to every one of you, do not think of yourself more highly than you ought. Do not think of yourself more highly than you ought. There's a Greek word here that Paul is using in regard to more highly. Do we have that one, Blake? Hyperthroneo. Hypothroneo. And essentially, hyper, a hyper focus is when we're so intently, we're looking at something so close that it becomes everything, that it's all that we can see. And what he's saying in this moment is stop thinking about your life so much. Stop thinking about yourself so much. Stop just trying to figure yourself out so much. Stop looking within your own life and trying to self-define everything around what's inside of you. Give it a break. Stop thinking about yourself so much. To you and I, he's saying, stop trying to figure your life out so much. Stop thinking that you are this or you're that. Stop trying to self-define what it looks like to have worth and value, and or to define others, whether they have worth or value. Stop thinking about this so much. He goes on to say, do not think of yourself more highly than you ought, but rather think of yourself with sober judgment in accordance with the faith God has distributed to each of you. Sober judgment, being the thing in which you have an equal understanding. That the sobriety would say that you can kind of weigh things properly. That things don't get out askew in such a way. That you're paying attention in the right way. Hold your life soberly. Hold your understanding of yourself soberly. Do not let it start to get out of whack or out of balance. For just as each of us has one body with many members, and these members do not all have the same function, so in Christ we, though many, form one body, and each member belongs to all the others. If you're wondering where you belong, Paul is very clear. He says, with a body, with the people called the church. And what he's doing here is when he says stop focusing so much on your life, what you have and what you don't have, your giftings and your brokenness, what others have and what they don't have, and trying to figure out who you are. He's saying attach yourself to a body. Do you know how you know what your knee is? It's because you know it's not your hand. That's really helpful. Imagine really quick, whatever you want to imagine, something you do with your hand and then try it with your knee. You know so quickly that your shoulder is not your toe because you are connected to the rest of it. That you very quickly realize that this starts to put all the giftings together, that your hand is not a hand without an arm, that your foot is not a foot without a leg, that your torso is not a torso without two legs. You just can't keep going through it over and over again. And what you start to realize is that you are playing part in something larger than just yourself. There's a greater story than just your life. The self-esteem movement would say you are at the center of the world. And if you're an Enneagram 3 and you're leaning that way, you already think you're at the center of the world. And so other stuff just feeds that more. But what he's saying is you're not at the center. You're part of something larger. And it's this something larger that will actually start to help you understand who you are. That this will start to define your life. That this will define and help you see what you're good at and what is valued. That this larger body is offering you a place of belonging. That you do not have to exhaust yourself to feel good about yourself. That he's simply saying, attach yourself to the body, which is in and through Christ. That this does not come without a God who has come towards you and I in the flesh and has invited you and I through self-sacrifice. If you want a definition of life, may it be through the lens of self-sacrifice. That you and I are choosing not self-esteem, but joining a story of self-sacrifice. And it's in that laying down of who we think we are, who we've told that we're supposed to be or not to be, that we can now then be more sober about our life, that we can bring who we are to the table, to a room, to a body, and say, this is me. Here's what I have and here's what I don't have. And then the rest of the body starts to kind of weave it all together. And it starts to hold it together in a way that has forward movement and purpose and direction. And you and I right now are living in this tension. And the invitation is for you and I to be a part of a body that will help define who we are, that will help see more clearly who we are, that aims to provide dignity and value, no matter how much esteem one does or does not have. And if I was to pause right now, and we're going to spend a minute here just thinking about Midtown, right now, there's a couple things. I'll do the article first. So I read an article recently that basically captured the narrative around social influencers and how they use their kids for advertisement dollars, and specifically around moms and what it looks like to influence in a way that ultimately the narrative it's telling kids, and kids are experiencing this on their own in social media in general, is that my worth and my value is dependent on the number of clicks I can get. That my worth and my value is found in carefully crafting a narrative to put out in the world for people then to receive me as. That if I can just quiet certain parts of my life and just project the smaller pieces of my life, which may not resemble the whole, I will find belonging in this world. And we as a culture click, and we affirm, and we purchase, and we do it over and over and over again. And it's creating a narrative, as Jonathan Haidt would say in one of his books, that essentially what happens is kids are growing up with a social anxiety that has never been seen before. Kids and youth are constantly, more than ever, asking, where do I belong? Because everything is telling them that they don't, because they belong somewhere different. That you need to just self-identify more and more who you are. That you can't let anyone else help you with that. That you can't let anyone else tell you no. I mean, you just go down the list. The next generation, some sitting in this room, will experience this on levels that many of us in this room cannot even understand what it's like to navigate. The isolation that this creates, the loneliness, the depression, the anxiety, the rate of chosen death is going up astronomically amongst those that are younger. And we could just keep going. I don't think I'm saying anything too new to this group. The call of a church, and maybe the test of a church, is can it pass its faith down to the next generation? You and I, in this room, sit because someone passed faith down for generations. Someone chose to stand in the gap and to believe a different story than what culture was saying, and to create space for that story to be lived into and understood. And I think the test of Midtown in the number of years coming will be, can we pass our faith down to the next generation? If not, we'll cease to be a church. The church just stops. Many churches right now, the amount of buildings in America that are dedicated towards churches, that the average age in that church is above the age of 70, is astronomical. And I don't think everything's supposed to live forever. So in regard to churches, systems, organizations, that is not the end goal, that every single church lives on forever. But I do wonder if those that are paying attention are able to identify that one of our key roles is to pass down our faith, is to tell the story of God in our lives so that others can find God in their life. And we have a unique call. On any given Sunday, there's 45 to 55 kids of the ages of 0 to 12 downstairs. A number of them are here right now. If you're wondering what we're going to do about this, the answer's in the room. We will be a church that kids are not the obligation, but they're actually the motivation. That our kids and youth are experiencing a life right now where they do not know where to belong. That they are being told so many different things that if we can be people who say, you belong here, can you imagine how that changes the world? Can you imagine how that changes the way in which they operate in their school systems? Can you imagine what that means for their college choices and careers? Can you imagine what that means for their relationships, like right now in real time? It doesn't perfect everything. But what if we could say something like this? I heard it from someone else. They said, what if there was a narrative for kids that sounded like this? You will grow up to be part of a wonderful family who loves you and has a place for you. A family that stretches around the world forward and backward through time. A family that will give you a place to serve so that even the tiniest thing you contribute will be considered important by God and used for great things. What if that was us? That every Sunday we think about, man, we can show up and tell this story. We can invite someone into this story over and over and over again. And the reality is that at some point we won't be able to do this. Like right now within kids ministry, we have a director who gets paid for about 4 to 6 hours a week to oversee it and has a full-time job. And our director's job is not to be in the classroom. We have an admin support that helps print and curate curriculum and make sure the rooms are prepared and things like that. We have people downstairs right now where there's one adult in a classroom to about 14 kids. I say that admittedly, that's a safety concern. That's also a concern of how do we actually tell this story well when what kids are being communicated to is that they're an obligation, not a motivation. And so I wonder if the culture here at Midtown is to change to say a part of why we show up, a part of why we do this is so that we can tell this story to a generation of kids who are looking for a story beyond themselves. Because the answer is not within themselves. Identity is not achieved, it's received in the story of the kingdom. Our identity, who we are, is not achieved, it is received. And man, you and I get to play a story in that. We get to be a part of that story with other people. And so what we're going to do, in a very invitational, grace-filled way, is that summer's coming up. And I don't know about you, but if I was to pay attention to church attendance, it changes a lot in the summer because it's summer. And what this means then is that we get a lot of cancellations in kids ministry. We don't have enough people. I dream of a church that has 3 adults in each of these classrooms right now. And over the next few weeks, I'm going to keep talking about this. And right now what we're going to do is we're actually going to start passing out some cards because the invitation is for you to consider your summer. And I wonder if you can be in kids 3 times over the next 3 months, June to August. The math on that, I think, ends up being 13 Sundays. So there's 10 other Sundays to come and be wowed by anyone teaching, and your life completely transformed by 30 minutes of words. You also can still do vacation and go do fun things. And yet at the same time, your summer gets to become more meaningful because you get to create space for kids to say, you belong here as a part of this body. You belong here. So seriously, take this card right now. I'm going to invite the worship team up. And we're going to move into worship in a second, but we're going to receive these cards in about 2 minutes. So you're not walking out with these. You are choosing them. And give it your best go. If you're like, man, I need an hour to even figure out my summer right now, that's fine. Take a card with you. I will be doing this all Sundays in May. So you have not missed your chance. But let's do this, honestly. And because what ends up happening is that usually what happens in a church, especially with serving and giving, is that most of the church rides on a small percentage of people. It's just the way we work as groups of people. There's no shame in that or guilt in that. But I want to be honest with that because I think the church operates best when every single part of the body is playing its part. And that we're not missing out from the experience of everything else that the body has to offer. If you want to watch your faith grow, I would recommend hanging out with some kids that are discovering the scriptures for the first time. If you feel like you're not reading enough scripture in your own life, go teach a group of 7-year-olds, and it'll make you read a little bit more because you'll learn it in some new ways. This is also I over the next few weeks, I asked the team, hey, send me all the excuses because there's a lot of them. I have them. My wife has them. They're just real because we all live life. And yet at the same time, I could sit here and genuinely say, I hear your excuses. I hear your reason. Yet, to be a part of this church, especially as a church plant, it means this, that we're going to participate. We're not going to rely on the other people who are willing to say yes so that we can say no. We're not. We are going to show up and say, what can I do here? How can I serve? And right now, I think the call mainly, we'll ditch slides so that more people can go be in kids. Aaron will stand up here and play the djembe and a violin and his guitar at the same time so that more people can go be in kids. I'll pre-record a video and just play it so that I can go be in kids. I'm not kidding though. If we don't get this right, we will cease to exist. Because what I'm not going to do is also continue to burn people out who are willing to say yes. That's usually what happens. There's a small group of people, they say yes, they love it, they're great, they're kind, and then about 6 months in, they're like, no one else is joining me on this mission. No one else is helping create space for these kids, and I'm done. I'm exhausted. And then we just kind of keep repeating that. I don't want to repeat that. I really don't. I want us to press in together. Could you imagine a culture of a church that over and again, everyone gets to be able to put their hand to the plow, and everyone gets to celebrate Reed's baptism last Sunday as an 11-year-old. Being baptized in the waters and spending the last 5 years in our kids' ministry with loving parents and community around him, that we all get to say, man, I got to participate in that story because I show up in kids once a month or whatever it is. So the baskets are going to come back up. Feel free to pass those in. The most you have them filled out. If you need another Sunday or whatever, bring them back over this month, and or there's digital ways of doing this. So thank you for letting me press a little bit and invite in. I think when we think about self-esteem, one of the things that can happen, I think we have one of the things that happens is even this self-esteem is even me as our pastor, I want us to look like we're functioning really well. I just hey, things are great, keep coming, do the stuff. And what I don't want to do is not say, hey, here's our needs. Here's where we're at as a church right now. Because then people miss out. I think we miss out on joining a complete story and what it looks like to participate and put our hand to the plow. So why don't we stand together? Let us stand. Speaking of kids, I always have my eye on the clock because that means they've been down there now, and I went a couple minutes over, so Sorry to those of you that are sometimes down there and this happens. So we're going to sing together, and then Andrew's going to come up here in just a minute and close us. But if we just pause for a second as we sing this next song together. May you sense God's invitation to play a part in a body, and not just for the sake of kids ministry or serving on a Sunday team, but that his forward movement in restoring and healing all the world comes through the image of the body. That every single one of us in this room has something to offer, has something in their life to lay down, has something to be redeemed and restored, and something to help heal this world. That you and I get to play a part in that. And what a beautiful thing it is. And what I love most is that we don't have to make that up. We don't have to just keep looking inwards to the answers that we don't have to try and give answers to the things we want to have. And so may we experience God's grace. And he just says, come, join the body. May you be reminded of your connectedness to something bigger than yourself. And so let's sing together. And next Sunday, I'm excited, we'll actually talk about our gifts specifically. We'll do a spiritual gift assessment and have some fun with that. So really looking forward to that. Turn those cards in the back if you didn't get a chance to yet, or bring them back. So let's sing. Andrew will come up in a minute.